So what's an example of, and that's what when we do tasawwur, it's a mental activity, right? We can't do a hukm on something unless we do a tasawwur, and that's where we, that's where the universals and particulars come into play. Well, one way that this is applied is, if, for example, in feminist thought. So in feminist thought, early feminist thought, I think first wave feminism, if not even second wave, you have what's known as gender realism. Remember we talked about Plato, the realist school. So you have gender realism, and it's a Platonic conception of universal womanness. So if you look at, we have what we would call, we would have no problem saying we have human beings in this room, right? This idea of humanness. Why? Because every individual here, right, when we interact with each other, we recognize each other as human beings. And because we have the essence of what it means to be the essence of a human being, which is a rational animal, that we partake in, or that we have, and we're an instantation of that universal or the essence of a human being. So then the question comes up here in feminist thought, well, what separates this group of human beings from that group of human beings, right? And what we would call, men and women. Why do we have this physical grouping? It's pretty interesting, right? And saying that you have to be on this side of the room and you have to be on that side of the room. And gender realists would say there is something to the idea of, if there's something to the idea of womanness, and there's something to the idea of manness or maleness as well. And the position that particular women are instantations of a single, non-physical, unchangeable form. Again, this is known as gender realism. And again, this creates a lot of issues for feminists as well, even though early feminists held this position. And they held it for valid reasons. There's been a response to this position, and the response has been, I remember we talked about how feminists are, they're an example. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily call them postmodernists either. Depends, you can have postmodernist feminists, you can have, modernist feminists. But gender nominalism is the other thing, and it says, remember, nominalists reject universals. So they reject this notion that there's the metaphysical position that posits a universal womanness to explain all of you, right? There's like this category of woman, right? This universal, that there's an essence to being a woman, and that you are all particular instantations of that essence. There's an essence of maleness, which you are all, instantations of. Particular instantations of. They deny that. Gender nominalists will deny that. This is pretty much, most feminists nowadays are gender nominalists. Although this creates a problem, because if you say there's no such thing as a female, they ask themselves, well, how can we be a feminist then? Because a feminist assumes that there's a female, a category of female, right, on that. Now, they have responses. They're very intelligent people as well. But this is important to show that this universal particular, this realist, nominalist, philosophical debate, it has very practical, very real implications in our thought nowadays. And so, when Muslims will say, well, and I've heard many Muslim women, they say this, that, well, I'm a feminist. I've heard Muslim men say this. My question is, well, what do you mean by that? And do you really know philosophically what you're saying and what you're upholding when you use these terms? And, hopefully in the future we'll have people who understand these concepts and what's going on. But this is important to see that this idea of, universals and particulars, of essences, essentialism, when you negate this concept and you negate universals, it creates it has many implications in our lives as well. And so you have resemblance nominalism, right, which I spoke about before. So they say, well, we can still group all of you here, and you can sit on this side of the room, and we can still group all of you here, and you can sit on that side of the room, and we can still use the term woman, and we can still use the term, not that you have anything essential or there's an essence to being a woman, an essence to being a man. Why don't you just resemble each other? There's a resemblance amongst you, so, but many nominalists will say, you'll probably see many people who, if they say, well, I feel like I'm a woman, or a woman who we may say is a woman feels like they're a man, well, they can sit on that side of the room and they can sit on this side of the room, they can make their choice, right? And although you probably look at them and say, why aren't you on that side of the room? And so it creates but they will have no problems with this because this will include many different, this category of womanness or this universal womanness or universal of maleness will include, for them, people, because it's a resemblance, just based on resembling. You resemble each other. It's not based on that you share a common essence that we group each other on. So that's just to kind of show, it's a very important idea of universals and particulars, very, very important. And in the idea of essentialism, and then the different philosophical schools, where do universals exist? Realism and nominalism, and this applies to race as well. There's racial in race studies. You have, is race real? Is it a real universal, or is it, not? And the same type of discussions, metaphysical discussions, you'll see take place as well.